When I read Islam, when I read the Quran, when I read the Hadith, I read lots of traditions and teachings which are very close to what I follow.
Test the claim.
Good conversation.
But all the Jews were destroyed when
Nebuchadnezzar, no, they weren't
They
destroyed.
all were destroyed. They were taken as prisoners.
They were
and
taken to Babel.
remarried men and women, and they interchanged and whatever.
But in Babel, the
Babylon, they became Babylonian.
No. We wrote the Talmud.
So they all got mixed up. So
You're mistaken. So when we went to Babylon, we did not intermarry. We retained our, in the fact that there was up until the creation of the state of Israel, there was a huge Iraqi Jewish population that descends from the Jews that went there in the exile. We wrote what's called the Babylonian Talmud, which is the central text after the Torah for Jewish law. All Jews around the world followed the Babylonian Talmud.
No, the Babylon Talmud, I understand that. But at the same time, those women, the Queen Esther, she married that guy.
So I'll give you an example. Today,
your generation starts from a woman.
So listen to what I'm saying. Today in the
not from a man.
all Jews descend from women.
No, your religion
We don't all descend from Esther. Are you saying we all descend from Esther?
Esther means, what I'm saying, the Jewish people start from the women, not from men.
Yeah. All people start from women. We're all born from a mother, except in America where we're born from a man today. But most of us were all born from women.
You have to be Jewish to be born to
A Jewish
woman.
or you convert. They're the two options.
To a Jewish woman, you have to be born to
Yes.
be a Jewish person. That's the law.
Unless, what did I just say? Unless you convert. So Ruth the Moabite was married
to a non-pagan king.
Yes.
So what happened? She brought all generations of
But all
pagan
Jews
people.
But no. So she once she would be a mother, but it's fine. That's one person. Even which halakhically you're mistaken, but even so, that's one person. The majority of the Jews, like today, there are lots of Jews that marry non-Jews. It doesn't mean the Jews that don't marry non-Jews are no longer Jewish. It doesn't mean that their children aren't Jewish. Like America is suffering from a crisis of Jews marrying non-Jews. That's not the case in Israel. In Israel, where the majority of people are Jews, they all marry Jews.
Christians.
But anyway, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide you all to the straight path, the right path, and guide you to the haq, inshallah.
Which one of them? Which path?
Which
path?
Which path? The right, the straight, we would say the straight path.
Which one?
The straight one.
The Islam.
La. Tawheed, yes. Islam. Judaism, let's say.
Why do you see in Islamic
Sharia? So I'll be honest with you. Right? When I read Islam, when I read the Quran, when I read the Hadith, I read lots of traditions and teachings which are very close to what I follow.
Absolutely.
And I know so many Muslims that do incredibly good deeds, and they base it all on these teachings. So I have a lot of respect for your tradition. However, I believe the haq is with Musa and not with Muhammad. However, but because Muhammad is based, like almost everything that Muslims do is based on something that we do, whether it's Hajj, whether it's how you make Salat. And I'll give you credit, some of the things you've actually preserved that we've forgotten. So in the time of the Talmud, when Jews made Salat, first and foremost, a Jew makes Salat like this. Look, his heart should be to Jannah, to heaven, we say the Shekinah, and his eyes should be down to the floor. And when we come to the parts where we bow, traditionally we would fall to the floor. But Jews today have lost that tradition. The Muslims have preserved that. So there's things that I think you're doing even better than we are. You're preserving a tradition which is fallen out of practice out of the Jewish people. It's recorded in the Talmud. Rabbi Moses Maimonides talks about it. And so there's many things to respect Islam for. But when it comes to is Muhammad a prophet? For me, I don't believe he is, otherwise I'd be a Muslim.
There's one thing I'm seeing you. You keep saying the Talmud, but I didn't see you say the Torah a lot.
So the Torah is like the constitution. So in the Jewish legal tradition, Moses was given a Sharia at Har Sinai, which was binding for all the Jewish people, for all time. It's an Hukat Olam, an eternal law, an eternal covenant. And what happened was all the prophets that came after, they were sent with a message to bring the Jews back to that law. So that's the foundation of Jewish law. The Talmud is the oral tradition. It's like the Hadith, and so the only difference is with the Hadith, it's just the sayings of Muhammad and some of the Sahaba. However, within the Talmud, there's twofold. There's the sayings. There was the oral law that was given to Moshe. Halacha le Moshe mislinai. Halacha for Moses. It doesn't matter. A law for Moses given to Moses at Sinai, at Har Sinai. And so there's the oral tradition, and then there's the what are called gezerot, takanot, which are laws that were introduced by the Supreme Court to protect the law of Moses. So a lot of what Jews do today, and even sayings in the Quran, were actually said by sages of Babel, the Babylonian sages we're talking about, the sages of Israel, and it's recorded in the Mishnah and the Gemara, which is collectively called the Talmud. And so that contains the oral law. It contains these additional decrees. And so, for example, if I ask a Muslim what's his favorite ayah in the Quran, if I'm speaking to a liberal progressive Muslim, they often tell me someone who takes a life is like he destroys all of humanity. Someone who saves a life is like he saves all of it. That's from Sanhedrin. That's sayings from our sages. That's in the Talmud. It's not in the Torah. So the Quran quotes the Talmud. Most Muslims don't know this. So I hear Muslims cursing the Talmud. I'm like, don't curse the Talmud. No, I know you did. I know you didn't. You asked what it was. Astaghfirullah, I haven't been. You did not say that. Yeah. And so, when they say that, I point the verses that are in, or a verse that's in the Quran, and show them where it was written hundreds of years earlier in the Talmud. And just say, be careful when you insult the Talmud, because the Quran quotes it. This is not from the Torah, and it's talking about Bani Israel, and that particular tradition was from the Talmud.
So does it contain the word of Moses, or
so the Talmud includes the word of Moses, but it also includes the easiest way to view it is like the recordings of the Supreme Court. Moses set up the first court. It was Moses and the Sakanim, the 70 elders, and they established the first court. And it's in the Torah that we were supposed to establish a court. And actually, it's one of the laws we think that non-Jews are supposed to do as well. We believe there are 7 laws for non-Jews, and one of them is establishing courts. But we are supposed to have a Supreme Court, and they have the authority to introduce laws to protect the Torah. Their only function is, not its only function, but its primary function when they introduce laws is to protect the Torah and keep the Jews on the Sharia of Musa. And so there are man-made laws in the Talmud.
You're saying that Talmud and Torah was only given to y'all by the Jews, but in the Rig Veda and Buddha and Jainism, it was given long time back earlier. In the Rig Veda time, before the Hinduism did not exist, the Rig Veda existed.
So I don't know about Hinduism.
The Rig Veda existed, the Buddhism existed, Jainism existed.
But
so
I don't
that
believe.
was
Yeah.
there for us. The 10 Commandments were there for us. Before any religion, 10 Commandments existed
So
for us.
we believe.
Couldn't disobey our parents. Till date,
So-
it's very difficult for a Hindu child to disobey their parents.
So within Judaism, there's a concept of a law which is logical, which makes sense, like honouring your parent, and you can just rationalise and arrive at that. And then there are laws which you'd never rationalise. So, for instance, we can't wear certain garments with mixed meat. Even something like eating bacon, like you can try and rationalise, but there's some things you could never rationalise your way to, which are like divine commandments for us. So some like don't murder, obviously, but like you can arrive at that. But there are other laws which aren't. And so what you've described are those laws which are rational, and Judaism believes that there were laws that we believe there were 7 laws that were given to Noah. So what that means is there were 7 laws for all of humanity, and that's like don't murder, don't have immoral relationships, don't tear a limb off a living animal and eat like a dog's leg. That's like haram.
So what is
Not
the
that I need to
free
tell the
laws
Muslims
that
that.
added to the Jews, basically?
Pardon?
What is the free laws that you guys extra? Because you said there are 7 laws.
There's 7 laws. Oh no! The 10 Commandments are separate. 7 laws are separate.
they're
Yeah.
separate things.
So that we believe the 10 Commandments are actually only for the Jewish people, which Christians find interesting to believe. I don't know what Islam says about that, because that's part of the Sharia of Musa. However, when you look at the 7 laws, like some of them are like, one of them is like don't be an idolater, like worship Hashem, and that's in the 10 Commandments. It's like don't have immoral relations, and so but don't murder is in the 10 Commandments. So some of the laws are shared.
The 7
Yeah.
is shared, and then there is.
Yeah.
What is the ones that actually just specifically?
So, but with Jews we have 613 laws in the Torah, but then in the Talmud there's hundreds more. So we have lots of laws, but all the laws are there to protect those 613, and they can be very logical, like don't murder. They can be to do with how you do sacrifices. They can be to do with
What you do in a childbirth, for example, we're Muslim, we have to do something.
Exactly.
To have a baby.
Exactly, and so we have lots and lots. The way to understand Judaism is if you take the strictest Muslim
I think it's easy. No, I'm easy.
dial it up
It
to like
makes
200.
sense.
Like being Jewish is like, for instance, the dietary laws in Islam. Like halal is easy. I look at you guys and I get jealous. In Judaism, like even if I want to have a salad, I have to wash it a special way with salt and then check the water for insects and then.
To be honest, our scholars told us about this, that Jews used to have a lot of harder laws that God had put into you guys.
Yes.
And in Islam, why God eased up some of these laws for us. But by example, not eating pork, for example, we don't eat pork, something. But by example, you guys don't eat camels.
Yeah, 100. We don't do camel.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not how you get it.
Even Muslim, we can eat from the Jew.
Yeah, we can eat, but I'm saying about
No, he
things
bought
we
the
can
tent.
eat
He bought
and
the
we
tent
cannot
for
eat.
us.
So in the Judaism, I think they've got a lot of more harder rules.
Yeah.
And in Islam, like, not what scholars told us, that God made it harder for the Jews because the way they were up.
Now also
Yeah.
God gave them a harder law.
So we did
They
have
want to
hard law.
worship harder, or maybe, I don't know what it is.
So we kind of say we're supposed to be a nation of priests. That's what the Torah describes us. And when you think of a priest or a sheikh or an imam, like they're supposed to live by a higher standard. They're supposed to, and so that's what. And anyone can join and become a Jew and live that standard, but you don't have to. And that's why we have the concept of the 7 laws of Noah is for humanity. That's too much, but if any of humanity wants to join the Jewish people, they can. But it would be too much to expect this of everybody. It's much easier to get the Jannah as a non-Jew than a Jew. It's
My other thing, yeah. So you see the book of the Torah.
Yeah.
Is the Torah same as the Bible being written after Jesus always?
No. So the Torah. So when I say the Torah can mean one of two things. It can either mean the 5 books of Moses,
Yeah, that's what I meant.
or it can mean the entire Tanakh,
No,
which
the
is all the
5 books of
prophets.
Moses.
So the 5 books of Moses predates Jesus by like 1500 years, and it is.
But do you believe in them? Yeah.
The Torah books of Moses, 100%. But we read it in Hebrew, whereas Christians will read it in the translated text.
Yeah.
So that I would encourage.